Hey folks, Sean here, and in this episode I want to talk to you about why it's so important to have a SaaS business model right out of the gate. In fact, I would go as far as to say that you should design your business model before you even get close to building your software product. Now, the biggest reason for this is because of how human psychology and the way that we pay for things works according to people. And because you're building a business that's going to be selling to those people, then we need to account for that. Especially the technical types. Myself, I have a software background, software engineering background, and these were concepts that I had to learn through practice. I didn't really fully understand how people think about pricing, and there's actually a lot of psychology in pricing in terms of what we'll pay for, what we won't, so on and so forth. So that's what goes into a lot of the strategies that a lot of companies that manufacture goods, especially like consumer goods, use in their pricing strategy in order to succeed. The classic example out there is the one from JCPenney, who way back when they had wanted to test a theory where instead of basically what all big box retailers were doing previously, where they would know what the cost of a product was, but in order to quote unquote sell it or sell more of it, promote it, they would sometimes jack up the price and then mark it down so that it's always on sale. That felt, I guess, a little bit deceitful, and that practice is just rampant. It's everywhere, from big box retailers to supermarkets to everywhere for the most part. But what they wanted to do was test, what if we just had straightforward pricing model where it's if the jeans cost $20, the jeans cost $20. We're not going to mark it up to 40 and then sell it for $19.99 at 50% off. So they did this, and all they were hoping that would go well, it actually went really poorly. Their sales plummeted, and I'm not sure if they ever technically recovered from that. So there's a lot more detail to that story, but the point is that there's a lot more to managing pricing and a business model than you might immediately be thinking of. Now, this is one of the reasons why I'm so adamant about we design and build one up front. This also comes from me seeing more examples of products out there that have started without a business model in mind, at least initially, and a lack of their ability to be able to sustain operations or raise funding in order to continue. Now, I'm going to throw out a couple of examples here, but the point is that if you start with a product that's expected to always be free, your ability to convert that into a paid product, so that's why it's so important to have a strategy here and ideally test and validate that right out of the gate. Now, the example that I'm constantly reminded of is Wikipedia, which has a completely different model, and I understand why they have been attempting to essentially be a community-funded project, but they're seemingly always short on funding because they're pretty aggressive about trying to get people to contribute. And full disclosure, I have, because I feel like I get a lot of value out of it. But from a pricing strategy and a human psychology perspective, I think more than likely why they need to do that so frequently and why it's probably so difficult is because of this human psychology in pricing in terms of products perspective. I think because people have had free access to it for so long, they just expect that to be something that is free. So if someone's trying to charge or raise money around it or whatever, they're seeing there is a flag potentially going off in their mind about why that isn't the way that it's supposed to be. That's abnormal, essentially. So as such, if you've started in one way and you're trying to convert back to paid or raising funding or whatever, going the other direction is so much harder than if you start paid out of the gate. Plus, if you start paid out of the gate, it's a good validation test for what it is that you're building and realistically whether or not you should ever even build it. So this and many other examples, I see ad blockers are constantly trying to do the same thing, and all these products that offer relatively aggressive free tiers. And that's why I'm less of a fan of the whole free tier concept. I know that a lot of people feel that if I offer a free tier, free forever component, then I'm going to be able to just scoop up all the users out there and get everyone on my platform. most of the people that I've worked with in a B2B SaaS fashion that have attempted a strategy like that have not been very successful with it. So I advocate that you instead switch to a free trial, because that enables you to essentially be able to do something relatively similar. So it meets that need, but at the same time, it limits your downside risk, because if you offer just a free trial or a free tier, like indefinitely, then you really need to know a lot more about when people will convert, if they will convert, and what the economics of that is going to look like over the long run. That's why a lot of free tier products often have raised a ton of money and come from very large companies. So you need to be careful with a strategy like that. But the point of this episode is really to have a pricing strategy out of the gate, validate whether or not you can charge for your product right away, and that will make a lot of these problems essentially be something that you're realistically never going to have to deal with. If instead you take the alternative approach and you don't verify or validate these things out of the gate, you start free, then your users and your customers are always going to expect it to be free. And it's always going to feel like pulling teeth with them in order to try to get them to pay.